Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Julie and I primarily make content surrounding topics such as mental health, makeup, and music. Beyond having agoraphobia, which is the reason why I wanted to make this video today, I also have a good deal of clinical knowledge about it since I am a counseling graduate student. I've completed all my academic coursework and I'm just awaiting a final internship. However, I have 700 hours of clinical experience in a school setting doing counseling. So my reaction to this video is going to be a mix of my personal feelings and my professional feelings and opinions, and honestly, professional and personal opinions go together to make one cohesive opinion. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Agoraphobia, an overwhelming fear of places and situations that may cause helplessness or embarrassment. For agoraphobics, leaving the safety and familiarity of one's home, entering a crowded space, and all anxiety-inducing situations in general tend to result in debilitating panic attacks. The term agoraphobia was coined in 1871 by German neurologist Carl Westphal, who used the Greek word agora, meaning market, in reference to the fear of large, open spaces. But what
Okay, so far, I just want to say this is interesting. I like that he's starting it off by giving a historical background of the disorder and where the term originated from. I do want to make a comment. So look at the title. I spent a day with Agoraphobics, in all caps, extreme anxiety disorder. So I have a couple of qualms with this. And now Anthony Padilla does not have agoraphobia. He is not well educated in mental health, but he is a great human being and has been so respectful to every individual in all of these series episodes that he has done. However, agoraphobics. Now, I've called myself agoraphobic. I'm sure plenty of us with agoraphobia have said, I'm agoraphobic, I'm an agoraphobic. So I think there's a difference between I'm agoraphobic and I have agoraphobia, because when we say I have agoraphobia, I have A, B, and C mental disorder, we are saying this is a condition that I have, just like someone having a physical health condition like Crohn's disease or diabetes. It's different to say you have a mental health condition as opposed to saying it's part of who you are, which I don't think any people who are saying I'm agoraphobic are thinking it's who they are. But when we use certain language, it actually can negatively contribute to our perception of our mental health condition, and we may start limiting ourselves saying, I'm agoraphobic, I can't do A, B, and C. Whereas if we say I have agoraphobia, we recognize it's a condition and there are treatment options for it. Lastly, I want to say extreme anxiety disorder. It's a severe anxiety disorder. The DSM would never use the word extreme. I feel like the extreme aspect is what is making people click because they're finding it fascinating and such, and I'm glad that it's bringing people forward, but I don't want agoraphobia to be represented as something that is, oh, there's this extreme anxiety disorder and you should check out all these videos on it, because it's just stigmatizing to the community, and I wouldn't want to label myself of, hey guys, I have an extreme anxiety disorder, whereas I may classify it as I have agoraphobia and it is a severe disorder. Okay, rant done on title, let's continue.
What about the estimated 1.8 million adults who have agoraphobia? My name's Anthony Padilla, and today I'm going to be remotely sitting down with people who have agoraphobia to learn the truth about this often overlooked and misunderstood anxiety disorder. Is agoraphobia easily overcome with simple coaching and therapy? Or is this anxiety disorder far too overbearing and crippling for anyone to ever overcome, leaving these individuals to forever live within the confines of their own home?
Okay, hopefully it does get into treatment options, and this video is to destigmatize the disorder, spread awareness, and instill hope in individuals who may be afflicted with it. I am not really liking this intro so far. I see where it comes from because we want people to be fascinated with it, but at the same time, I don't want to feel like I'm so crippled that I'm never going to get better, and I wouldn't be in the mental health field professionally if I didn't believe that people could recover from mental illnesses over time. Of course, we can't have a cure, but we can reduce our symptom severity and persistence and relapse occurrence.
Hey, Josh.
Hi, Anthony.
Wendy.
Hello.
Kylie.
Hey, Anthony.
Fellow emo person, fellow
Thank
alti
you
person,
so much for
yay.
coming out and teaching me about the wondrous world of living with agoraphobia.
I mean, it's very wondrous.
What do you consider yourself? Agoraphobic, panic attack connoisseur?
I just like to say that I'm someone who's diagnosed with agoraphobia.
I also have
Yes.
obsessive compulsive disorder, and so the agoraphobia somewhat piggybacks that.
Can I consider
absolutely.
myself a train wreck?
Aw.
Before we learn more about the wondrous world of living with agoraphobia, that's all I wanted to say. Now back to learning about the wondrous world of living with agoraphobia. What does having agoraphobia entail?
For me, it's just kind of when I'm in tight situations with a lot of people around me, my head just starts to I feel like I'm trapped or stuck.
Going outside your comfort zone can cause panic attacks, you can hyperventilate, you can lose feeling in your hands and feet.
And usually the most comfortable place is within the safety of your home. But it doesn't have to do with the home itself, it has to do with the safety.
It does.
Think of the scariest movie you've ever watched or the scariest game you've ever played, or when you go into sleep paralysis. That's how I feel when I go outside to talk to people or to just be around people. It's like the worst experience ever.
It's just that
What Kylie is saying here seems to be bordering somewhat on social anxiety, and agoraphobia and social anxiety can often be very comorbid. However, when making the diagnosis, it's important to rule out, is this agoraphobia or social anxiety? Because someone can fear social situations, but you have to make sure they're also fearing those main 6 parts of agoraphobia, although you only need a couple for the diagnosis. So I appreciate that she mentioned that because that is such a common occurrence. It's interesting that there appears to be different severity levels so far, where there's an individual who seems like he can leave his house, but these crowded, tight situations are hard, whereas for this other person, she struggles to even go outside and be around people. So I appreciate that different populations within individuals who have this mental health condition are being represented.
perpetual state of anxiety.
Always.
How long have you had agoraphobia?
And I've been diagnosed for 3 years now, but I think I've had it for longer. I've probably had it for 5 or 6.
I don't think it set in until my early 20s.
It really, really spiked when I was around 17, 18 years old, when I went through some really traumatic events.
Right.
And
Okay, if you haven't watched my video on what is agoraphobia or my story with agoraphobia, trauma and phobias are interrelated. So whether that is a trauma of driving or experiencing bullying of some sort, and just so many traumas are possible, but a traumatic experience, especially if it occurred in a public place or a social situation, can absolutely lead to phobias such as agoraphobia and social phobia. So I appreciate she mentioned that as well.
got so bad that now my entire life is constrained to a closet.
My mom has agoraphobia, and she tells me that some of the first instances when she realized that she was feeling these feelings that ended up being agoraphobia is when she felt like she was dissociating or feeling derealization, like she wasn't part of her body or the world.
Okay, it's interesting he's mentioning this. I didn't know his mom had agoraphobia, and I'm glad he shared that. So I am interested on his insight to the condition, because when you have a loved one, especially someone you live with a mental health condition, you do hopefully learn to understand it better. I appreciate that he is mentioning dissociation, depersonalization, derealization, those aspects, because those are a maladaptive coping skill to dealing with trauma. And as Kylie previously mentioned, she endured a traumatic event which led to her agoraphobia. So this is clinically fascinating so far. I'm feeling a little better about it now.
What was the feeling that first made you avoid going out? And this is a question for my mom.
I think I was probably in a middle school classroom when I had this, I wouldn't necessarily call it an outer body experience, but I felt like I wasn't in my own head. I felt like it's just everything was just too much, and I couldn't focus, I couldn't move. I was just kind of frozen.
I started making more excuses about reasons why I couldn't go out. As I noticed, they just started to pile up, and I started to think, I just don't want to go out anymore. It became harder and harder to go out.
I want to give a trigger warning because this is really dark. I'm trying not to get emotional.
Yeah, that's okay. And if it's too much, don't force yourself to talk about it.
I don't think I'm going to include Kylie's story here in depth because it is very triggering. So if you're interested in her story, please check out the video around this point. I do want to quickly summarize that she met a man online and ended up in a bad situation, and it appears that she was hurt / assaulted in some way tragically. I do appreciate that when she got really worked up, and I've seen Anthony do this in other videos, that he said it's okay if it's too much, you don't have to talk about it, which trauma informed, A+.
The one thing that I will say is he tried to kill me. There was a point where he was.
So beyond being hurt for Kylie, she admits this person tried to kill her. So this must have been an extremely traumatic event. I can't imagine enduring something like that, but she's so brave for coming out and talking about it.
I can only imagine how helpless you felt in that moment and how that must have affected you psychologically with everything in your life.
To feel that, like, I'm gonna die and have that rush go through your head of, like, I still wanted to do things. Like, there's stuff I wanted to see and go through and experience. Like, is this really where it ends? And then to just all have that come back.
How do you think that specifically affected your agoraphobia? And did that trigger the agoraphobia right away?
There was an accident, and I lost the little brothers that got me through that survival. They passed away. Those were the two big events that really were like, wow, the world kind of sucks. I want to stay inside.
You felt completely powerless in your life, and you felt like you had no control, so you're going to retreat to your safest.
So I like that Anthony he's kind of being a little bit of a therapist here, not intentionally, but he is looking for themes within Kylie's story because she suffered these intensive traumatic events. I appreciate that he talked about a theme of feeling powerless and as a loss of control as well, because these are very common themes for many individuals, mental illness or not, but especially people who have endured intensive traumas.
Place to make you feel sane, to make you feel normal, and I'm not surprised that that was in the comfort of your home.
Thank you for giving me like a platform to share it, because I don't know, a lot of people don't know what I've been through, so a lot of people just kind of look at me and are like, why do you hide in your house all the time? Like, you're fine.
What types of lifestyle adjustments did you need to make once you realized that you had agoraphobia?
I do everything in steps. And I tell myself, you don't have to do it all at once. I was like, you have to go out to your car. Then when you get in the car, you have to drive here. And then when you get here, and I keep track of these steps. And if you do it in steps, it's a little bit easier.
My mom told me that specifically she feels most safe if she ever has to go out to a pharmacy to pick up a prescription or something like that, if she can see the car that she knows that will take her home, if she could see that car through a window or just like outside the door.
I do that too. I didn't even think of.
I like this part of the video because we're going over coping skills. Anthony asked a very insightful question, asking how someone's lifestyle was changed by the development of this mental health condition that limits them from going outside and certain aspects of functioning. And I absolutely agree with the coping skill of taking what you have to do and breaking it into chunks and focusing on one thing at a time. This is also mindfulness, and personally, this is something I do because I am all about routine, especially right now where we're stuck inside, which is great for us agoraphobics. It's interesting, some individuals with agoraphobia right now feel like I was born for this and are okay with it, and others like me are freaking out.
About that, but I do that too. I park where I can see it from where I am.
Something about knowing that that is a safe place and that it's within your line of sight probably calms your nerves.
It does.
The biggest thing right now for me is most of my classes are at home as far as high school goes. So I take most of my classes in my house, where I am able to trust my parents and trust my family, and which is really nice.
I only go to certain places. I have very regular like store people that know, like people who work at the store, they all know me by name. They all know when I'm going to be there. Restaurants, they all know what I eat. They all know when I'm going to be there. They all know me.
Oh my gosh, this is so relatable for me. This is so funny. So I have a few go-to restaurants, one in particular where I have a favorite waitress, and even if it's dead and I'm just going there for lunch, I will call ahead and they'll know it's me, and she will come over to serve me. She'll know what drinks my dad and I want. She knows that I have a gluten-free roll and I have dip without garlic. This is just so spot on about having regular places you go and preparing for them and becoming a regular in a sense. I love this.
By name.
You have your routines, you have very specific things that you know you're safe doing and feeling.
Like I have a schedule, like I had to completely change it for this interview, which was tough. And I had to like build up to it for a week because I was like, this is not my routine. This is not my routine. It's totally worth it. I'm gonna do this. It's okay.
What does a typical day look like for you?
I have like a task board on my fridge where I have things. Most people it would just, it'd be bigger things, but some of mine are just like drive my son to school. That is an accomplishment right there.
Yeah, my mom will.
Yes, this is another coping skill and therapeutic strategy. Even for things that to other people may seem small, every accomplishment deserves to be celebrated. I love that she said, hey, I did this task and I should be proud of it and feel accomplished. Heck yeah, you should. I love Wendy. Yay.
Will tell me about plans she has for, multiple weeks away, about certain little things that she has planned. And then when those dates come and pass, she'll text me and be like, oh, I went to the grocery store and I was able to be in there for 10 minutes and I felt okay. And there are these things that other people might see as mundane or normal or small situations.
Oh, totally.
But they are big accomplishments to someone that.
I'm glad he mentioned this as well, but his mom, I appreciate that he's bringing in his personal experience with his mom to openly talk about some of the ways people with agoraphobia tend to cope. And it is a really big deal when you struggle to go out, especially to go to a grocery store, because it can be so crowded depending on where you go. The people can be a little hostile, and it really is about gradual exposure. You don't need to make these goals of like, I'm going to do everything in a day and do a full grocery load. If you can go for 10 minutes and pick something up, that is a huge deal and something to be proud of. But at the same time, I appreciate that Anthony mentioned that for others this is very mundane and people wouldn't think twice about it going to the grocery store for if they don't have agoraphobia.
How has your experience with quarantine been?
It hasn't changed at all. My routine is exactly the same. The only thing that's a little different is like when I go to my doctor's office. I know it's not that video, but I am immune compromised as well as being agoraphobic because when I said I was a train wreck, I wasn't joking.
Oh yeah, it's been pretty great.
It's a good thing for you.
It's pretty great. With all due respect, quarantine is great for me because all of the people that I would normally enjoy spending time with aren't out at school. They're at home themselves, so I can call one or two of them at a time. And I love playing video games. I love, texting. I'll Skype call them.
It's such a mixed bag. Like there's a little part of me that's like, oh, we can be in quarantine. We don't ever have to go out. I'm wondering if like the novelty will wear off because there's one thing to like choose it for yourself, but when you're trapped, I'm wondering if eventually that'll shift and so I'll feel trapped in my own house.
Do you feel like you were better prepared for the quarantine than other people who aren't agoraphobic?
That is a really good question about if people with mental health conditions, specifically agoraphobia, since we are stuck in our house, are we better prepared because we've found ways to cope with this versus people who have never been exposed to something like this being stuck in the house. I also can see Wendy's point about how at first it's like, oh great, I have to stay home and don't really have to confront my fears, but after a while you could feel trapped. And this is something I relate to. I totally feel trapped right now. If you have agoraphobia, I'd be interested. Do you feel that way?
Phobic?
I feel like I am. And my OCD is a contamination phobia centered. And so I already had all of this stuff. I was like set for hand sanitizer and all this kind of stuff. And so this is like all in my wheelhouse.
How do you feel about people claiming that they're agoraphobic now or understand the feeling of agoraphobia just because of the quarantine?
I think that's a completely unjustifiable comparison.
It's more than just not leaving your house. It's a lot more than that. It's a feeling, it's a mental state. And when people say they understand it, it's kind of the last thing I want to hear.
When you have agoraphobia, your world becomes so challenging. The outside world is so hostile. and it takes over every aspect of your life. Sometimes I wonder who I am outside of some of these conditions, and I don't think that's something that just somebody in quarantine can experience.
Do you proudly tell people that you're agoraphobic, or is that something that you keep more as a secret?
It doesn't come up in conversation much. I only really like to talk about it when I have to, because I mean, I would rather not be looked at as someone with treated like someone with a condition.
Not so much anymore, and it's not that I think people should be ashamed of being agoraphobic. It's just my personal experience has not been positively received, so I kind of keep it to myself.
I tell people I have OCD, I tell people I have agoraphobia, because it's not something to be ashamed of. It is a part of how I live my life.
Can you just
Wendy, yes! I totally understand where the other two are coming from, and a big piece of that comes from the stigma, but also, like they explained, they don't want to be defined by their mental health condition, and people don't always understand it, so whoever you're telling about it, you want to feel safe. I have a little bit of a different view in this because I am a strong, passionate mental health advocate. I have videos on my channel about all different mental health conditions that I deal with, all stemming from trauma and complex PTSD for the most part. And I'm very open about how I have agoraphobia because I think it's so important to properly represent what a mental health condition's like. And also, I never talk about my mental health conditions as a death sentence. I always try to instill hope in others and be optimistic that there are treatment options and my symptoms will improve over time.
describe how helpful therapy has been for you throughout this whole process?
It has been amazing. Therapy, honestly, has changed my life, which is so frustrating because therapy has such a negative connotation in society. So many people are like, oh, you go to therapy. Like, it's so good.
I'm a huge advocate for therapy. My life has been so much better. I've been more content in being myself and knowing that it's okay to feel the feelings that I feel.
Your feelings are
I
valid.
can't even put into words how far I've come and like the work that I've done and like the wounds that I didn't even know I had that I worked through.
It takes work. It's not passive. You have to make that effort and you have to want it. The only way that you're going to benefit from therapy is if you want to be benefited from therapy and you're willing to work through the tough moments.
Exactly. They want you to do the work. And when you do the work, you find so much success and you find so much about yourself that you didn't even realize.
How difficult is it?
Before we get to the next question, this open conversation is great. I didn't know Anthony goes to therapy. I don't know if he's mentioned it before, but he was so spot on about how important it is and how much of a difference it can make and that it's okay to feel your feelings. Validation is at the forefront of trauma-informed care, and it should be at the forefront of every relationship with human beings, but specifically a therapeutic relationship. Your therapist should be your number one validator. So yes.
To explain what agoraphobia is to someone who has no concept.
So it is difficult for them to understand the severity of how much it affects your life. When you say, I have agoraphobia or I have OCD, they're like, oh yeah, I do too. You're thinking you have a lot more choice in this than there is.
I really couldn't grasp the concept and just how debilitating agoraphobia actually is until I experienced my first panic attack in my early 20s. And it was at that point that I saw that it's not a choice.
You don't have as much control over it, I think, as the average person thinks.
Is it difficult for you to maintain a work life with agoraphobia?
I haven't been able to work for a long time. And that means that I have to rely on the people in my life. And that f***ing sucks.
My mom always tells me that she hates to be a burden. She doesn't want to ask for help because she hates to be a burden. And I'm just constantly like, Mom, you're not a burden. Mom, you're not a burden. And
I'm really glad Anthony mentioned this as well because agoraphobia or not, any mental health condition or any self-esteem, personal stressors and struggles, many of us are going to feel like a burden. We may isolate ourselves from talking to our friends or loved ones because we're afraid that it will be too much for them or they could leave or feel like we're a burden, and that would really hurt us and make us feel guilty because we care about them and we want them to be well and happy.
It's tough because I feel like in our society, we're constantly being told that if we are not contributing to society and taking care of ourselves and being fully independent, that we're nothing but leeching off of the people around us. But obviously that's not the case. The people around you help you because they love you and care about you and want you to feel safe. You're not a burden.
I grew up hearing the same thing, that like, if you don't work and if you don't contribute, you're worthless. And like, they tell me that too, that like they love me and that I'm not a burden and that it doesn't matter, but like, I'm sure your mom would tell you the same thing. They could tell you that until they're blue in the face, and you're always gonna feel like a burden.
How do you think people without agoraphobia should interact with those who do?
Talk to us, treat us as any other person. I don't like to be treated differently than somebody without agoraphobia. I don't like to be talked about. I don't, I think it's something to keep in mind. I wouldn't say forget it.
Laura Duthiel wants to know what the most extreme measure is that you've taken in order to avoid going out or to avoid uncomfortable situations.
When I was invited to a big party, and at this time not everybody knew what I was diagnosed with, and I couldn't go, but I didn't want to tell them that thing. So pretty sure I told them that my dog had died.
Oh no.
And they felt so bad. And I realized what I had done like 5 minutes after I said it. And I was like, I should have never said that. That was awful.
Not even realizing it, I ate bad food to make myself sick so I didn't have to go somewhere.
Oh my God, because you had an excuse that was true and you didn't have to feel like you were lying.
I'm puking my guts out. I can't go.
Maybe not the best way to go about it.
I didn't go eating the food like, I'm gonna do this so I don't have to go. But like, I know my allergies. I shouldn't have eaten that.
Bunny X Soap wants to know if...
So I'm trying to think of what the most extreme measure I've done to avoid situations has been. I've never lied extensively or made myself sick like they have, which I feel bad for them. Mine has always been, my mom said I can't, and I'm almost 29, and I will throw my mom under the bus, and she'll even tell me, go ahead and throw me under the bus, because sometimes I'll have friends try to make a plan with me of something I don't really want to do. Nowadays, I just would communicate it, but definitely years ago, especially when I first had agoraphobia and felt very ashamed and embarrassed of it and didn't want to admit that's what was going on, I'd just say, oh, my mom wants to spend time with me tonight, or I would say, my mom doesn't want me going to a place like that, or sleeping over, or staying out late, etc.
You're having an episode, how those around you could help.
Make sure they know that that you care about them, and try and get them to a place where they feel safe and can start to recover.
I really like just having that support of someone like, it's okay. Like, this moment is gonna pass and you're going to be okay.
If you woke up tomorrow and suddenly no longer had agoraphobia, what do you think the first thing is that you would do?
Going to festivals and stuff like that again. Not having to plan ahead of time, not having to make compromises on what I can handle in a day. It would be...
I totally agree with that, and Wendy is very big on routine, and I'm sure a piece of that is it quells the OCD, but it also helps her to cope with the agoraphobia, and I'm the same way. I don't have OCD, but I was diagnosed as a teenager with it, so I do still have some tendencies lingering around, and I also live with my mom who has OCD. Now, I agree with Wendy. I wish I could just go to a concert and not plan it. Also, my boyfriend is a very flexible person. He can go with the flow, and he can do last-minute plans, and so can his friend group, and I cannot. I'm like, hey, we're hanging out this day. What time am I coming over? Am I sleeping over? What am I doing? I have to plan every single little aspect in my life to, I guess, feel in control and cope with the anxiety.
Be freeing.
I think a plane ride, it just sounds so, I don't know. I don't see how there's so many people that just do it for, go on business trips and just act like it's nothing. Like, I can't even imagine being that far up in the sky.
Go get my girlfriend and go to the ocean.
You go to the ocean, just hang out at the beach?
Oh yeah. I love the ocean.
That's so funny you say that, because my mom always tells me that she wishes she could go to the ocean, specifically a tropical beach she's never been, and I'm always like, Mom, if for any reason there's one day where you feel like you are up for it, just call me, shoot me a text, tell me we're going to Hawaii, and I will make it happen and we will go tomorrow.
This is so important, he mentioned as well, because traveling is something that it would make logical sense is going to be really hard for people with agoraphobia. Traveling is something that is really hard for me. I went to Miami by myself, which was insane, and I did have agoraphobia. I don't even know how that happened, but I was in peril the whole time. That was 5 years ago. I used to go on yearly trips to York Beach in the summer with my family, and because of the crowds and my agoraphobia getting more severe over time, I had panic attacks and had to hide in the hotel, and I have stopped traveling. And again, this is hard because my boyfriend loves traveling. So it's something that's a goal for me to get better about, think of somewhere maybe I could enjoy going and attempt it. And that will be in an Agoraphobia Adventures vlog if it ever happens.
People with agoraphobia are usually assumed to be introverted and that they prefer the feeling of being away from people within their home. Do you find that to be the case with you?
I think I'm a very extroverted individual, and I love talking to people and meeting new people. And so I think yeah, it's not everyone introverts, and I think that's something that people need to kind of respect and not just say, oh, you must be happy during this quarantine. Seeing new faces and seeing new people is refreshing, but it's when a lot of things are happening at once that I start to break down.
How do your friends and family feel about you being agoraphobic?
So some of them know, some of them don't.
Some of your friends and family don't know?
There's a lot of my family that doesn't know, and they would not approve. And if they see this, it's going to be bad.
Really? What would you want to say to any of your
kidding.
unapproving family that ends up watching this?
You.
What do you think the biggest misconception?
I relate to that part a lot. I have some family members I don't talk to, and one of them is convinced that I don't have agoraphobia because she said, oh, arachnophobia, fear of elevators. She does not understand mental health at all. And she thinks that I secretly go to other gatherings and family parties that she's not at and handle it just fine, and I'm just avoiding her. And although, yeah, I am avoiding her and haven't spoken to her in years and never plan on it again because she is toxic and abusive, regardless, it was really insensitive and sickening. It's sickening that people don't approve. Like, this is a genetic issue in my brain. How am I supposed to control that besides treating it? So if anyone feels that way, they are a toxic family member. That's so upsetting.
Perception about agoraphobia is
that you don't like to leave the house. It's so simplified, and I think that's how come people don't recognize they have it a lot of times.
That people who are sitting in their houses all day are doing it because they want to. Like, I don't sit in my house all day because it's the bee's knees. I love outside. I think it's beautiful. But I can't go out there because I get scared, and that sucks. Like, my goal is to, by the end of the year, be able to set up a canvas outside and be able to paint on my porch.
If there's someone watching who is feeling helplessly debilitated with agoraphobia, is there anything that you'd want to say to them?
While it's going to be a part of your life, it doesn't have to define you. There will be bad days, like I'm anticipating some bad days coming up, but I also know that I can manage it, either with help from outside or just through like maybe online communities. You can manage it better. You can
Absolutely.
have a very happy life. You can do the things you want. You just may need to scale back or adapt them
But the utmost respect and support through their journey. And before we go, I want to dedicate this entire video to my mom, who has dealt with agoraphobia.
I just wanted to do that last clip. I'm glad he thanked everyone for being there, was very appreciative of their openness and sharing their stories, and I had a feeling he was going to dedicate the video to his mom, which is great. My final little review of this video, I know this is getting long, is that at first I wasn't really on board with the title and the introduction, but I feel that Anthony did a good job at crushing the stigma against agoraphobia in this, as well as being really respectful to the individuals that came forward, and they all had different stories and experiences of how agoraphobia affected their life, and the representation of, even though this is one mental health condition, it's going to look different in everyone because we are all individuals with unique experiences, personalities, predispositions, etc. It's so crucial to show that. So I'm appreciative of this video, and that's really all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like. I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel as well. Leave a comment down below letting me know if you've been watching his series, and if you check this one out, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can subscribe to my social medias as well. My Instagram is Julie_counseling. My Twitter is Julie Counseling with no underscore. And my Facebook page will be linked down below as well. And I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye, guys.